R. Kelly has claimed that Jay-Z helped fund the documentary that played a major role in his downfall. It sounds extreme, but Kelly believes it was personal. He's not just serving a 30-year sentence, he says he's being erased. Most people assumed his conviction marked the end of the story, that the industry had cleaned house and moved on. But everything changed this morning when Kelly's legal team filed a shocking motion alleging prison officials tried to silence him before he could expose powerful figures who have avoided accountability for decades. According to the filing, Kelly was deliberately overdosed, rushed to the hospital with blood clots, then sent straight back to solitary confinement. All of this allegedly happened within 72 hours of him warning that his life was in danger. His attorney...
These victims overcame Mr. Kelly's abuse. They deserve to be recognized. Know this, we stand here today because of them. Without them, today would not have been accomplished. Today is their day.
Cite medical records, a sudden transfer to isolation, and a sworn declaration from an inmate claiming members of the Aryan Brotherhood were recruited to finish the job. The Bureau of Prisons dismissed the claims as a fanciful conspiracy, but noticeably avoided addressing the gang connection directly. That's where the questions start. Kelly is already incarcerated for crimes everyone knows about, so why would prison officials suddenly see him as a threat? Unless it had nothing to do with his past and everything to do with what he's been saying recently. The filing landed on the federal docket at 4:37 p.m. By 5 o'clock, multiple sources confirmed the situation was worse than initially reported. Kelly wasn't just ill. He was found unconscious after what his lawyers describe as a deliberate overdose. He required emergency treatment for blood clots in his lungs, then was sent back to solitary confinement instead of recovery. The timing raised alarms. This wasn't random and it wasn't routine. Just 3 days earlier, his legal
indictment, that's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak-offs. So that's federal. That could be that's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
The team submitted documentation alleging correctional officers were working with a white supremacist gang to silence him. The motion doesn't just accuse negligence, it names names, cites written declarations, and outlines a clear sequence of events. First, Kelly speaks, then he collapses, then he's isolated. That's not coincidence, that's coordination. What's being whispered now is that this isn't about Kelly's crimes. It's about the names he's allegedly mentioned in private legal filings over the last 6 months, names connected to people who've never faced consequences. And the Bureau of Prisons' response only deepened suspicion. Their statement came fast, too fast, brushing off the claims without addressing the evidence. That's when the narrative starts to crack, because this isn't the first time Kelly claimed powerful people tried to silence him. Back in 2004, during the Best of Both Worlds tour, Kelly accused Jay-Z's security team of attacking him backstage after he alleged someone pulled a weapon during his performance. That incident was written off as ego and chaos at the time. But now, with Kelly claiming there's an effort to permanently shut him up, it looks different. It looks like a warning shot. After the tour collapsed, Kelly sued for $75 million. The case vanished quietly. Years later, Jay-Z allegedly supported the documentary that dismantled what remained of Kelly's public life. That doesn't look like accountability. It looks like a takedown, and critics are asking why someone who ignored Kelly's behavior for years suddenly got involved in his public destruction. What's being said behind the scenes is chilling. Kelly isn't just disgraced. He's dangerous to certain narratives. He's the loose end no one planned for. The lawsuits, the documentary, the sentence, those were supposed to end the story. But now he's in solitary confinement, claiming he has proof that ties powerful figures to a coordinated effort to silence him. And whether you believe him or not, the timing is impossible to ignore, because
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive.
When someone tries this hard to shut a man up, the real question isn't what he's guilty of, it's what he knows. Diddy's conviction came down 2 weeks ago. Kelly's filings hit the federal docket just 3 days later. Then suddenly, Kelly is hospitalized and placed in isolation. That isn't random, that's a sequence. And the only thing connecting those dots is the idea that someone with real influence doesn't want Kelly speaking publicly. The Bureau of Prisons can dismiss it as a conspiracy all they want, but the timeline doesn't add up. You don't involve prison gangs to deal with a nuisance. You do that when someone is viewed as a threat. And the only threat Kelly poses right now is what he claims to know. I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive. That's how Kelly describes it. Extreme words, yes, but they match the urgency of what his legal team is alleging. What doesn't fit is the reaction from the people who should be most concerned. Jay-Z hasn't said a word. Diddy's camp issued a brief statement about focusing on his appeal. The Bureau of Prisons dismissed everything in under an hour. That's not how institutions respond to claims they find harmless. That's how they...
I respect a response, you know, and again, hindsight, a lot of people don't, you know, people say, well, if I was Jay-Z, I would have done this. But you're not. And I gotta say this, you're not. So you don't know the situation.
They react when they're trying to contain a narrative. The story being whispered isn't that Kelly is innocent. It's that he's been inside the machine long enough to know where everything is buried. The real question isn't whether he's telling the truth. It's how far the people he's pointing at are willing to go to keep that truth from surfacing. This is where the story takes a darker turn. The filings don't just talk about a hit inside prison. They reference something Kelly has hinted at for months: recordings. Not the ones used in his trials, but recordings allegedly made at private gatherings where different rules applied. Industry insiders say these weren't just incriminating tapes, they were leverage, the kind that keeps powerful people quiet and compliant. That's why, according to some veterans, panic set in. This isn't about Kelly's past. It's about the present and what he could still expose. If that's true, then the alleged overdose wasn't just about silencing him. It may have been the opening move in something much bigger. What's being whispered now is that the people who should be nervous aren't the ones behind bars. They're the ones who spent years making sure no one connected these dots. Kelly's filings aren't just a plea for protection, they're a warning. Because if even part of his story is accurate, then the industry didn't just ignore its worst behavior.
That, of course, the allegation is that Mr. Combs did the same thing. And so if those facts are actually accurate, it would require an investigation by prosecutors. And if true, right, you could pursue a criminal.
Managed it, protected it, and benefited from it. That changes everything. It means the men who helped build hip-hop's empire didn't just look the other way. They enabled the system that allowed abuse to continue unchecked. And now that the last man is talking, the question isn't whether the truth exists. It's who's willing to go the farthest to keep it buried. Some believe that answer might be sitting inside a federal prison right now, waiting to see what happens next. Waiting to see whether the system protects him or finishes the job. Others urge caution, saying hindsight makes judgment easy. If I were Jay-Z, I would have done this, people say. But none of us were there. None of us know what decisions were made behind closed doors. Still, when you zoom out, a pattern starts to appear. The industry didn't expose its predators, it managed them. Kelly's 30-year sentence wasn't the end of his story. It was the moment he became a liability to the same system that once protected him. And the people who benefited most from that system now appear desperate to keep him silent. His filings don't just accuse one prison or one group, they suggest coordination that stretches far beyond a single facility. Legal observers say this isn't about crimes everyone already knows about. It's about the names Kelly has allegedly mentioned in private filings and conversations over the past 6 months. That's why the response has been so fast, so aggressive, and so focused on shutting him down before he can connect the dots publicly. And those dots point straight at two men who spent decades outrunning scandals while ensuring others couldn't. One is Sean Combs, recently sentenced to 50 months for transporting individuals across state lines for private gatherings. Prosecutors...
And I'm not saying allegedly.
Oh.
I'm saying, Sean Carter, you're a piece of shit. Taking Pimp C wasn't bad enough. You just want to go down there and you want to just remove all of the balls from every real Gangsta in Houston.
Relied heavily on testimony describing multi-day events where participants were allegedly impaired and recorded without consent. What's being said now is that Kelly wasn't just adjacent to that world. He may have been inside it. Possibly a participant, possibly a witness. That's why insiders claim the reaction to his filings has been so intense. It's not about protecting Kelly. It's about protecting the people he could implicate. Combs' conviction came first. Kelly's filings followed days later. Then came the hospitalization and isolation. That isn't bad luck. That's a sequence. And the only thing tying it all together is the possibility that someone with real power doesn't want Kelly connecting those dots out loud. And to be clear, these are allegations, but the claim is that Sean Combs was involved in similar conduct. If those facts are accurate, it would demand serious investigation by prosecutors. And if proven true, it wouldn't stop at civil consequences. It would move into criminal territory. The second name that keeps surfacing is Jay-Z. His connection to this story goes all the way back to the collapse of the Best of Both Worlds tour in 2004. That wasn't just a failed collaboration. It was a full-blown breakdown that ended with R. Kelly being pepper-sprayed backstage at Madison Square Garden after accusing Jay-Z's team of sabotaging his performance. At the time, it was dismissed as ego clashes and creative tension. But now, with Kelly's prison filings alleging an effort to silence him permanently, that incident looks very different. It looks less like chaos and more like a test run. After the tour imploded, Kelly sued for $75 million. The case disappeared quietly. Years later, Jay-Z was allegedly connected to funding the documentary that effectively erased what remained of Kelly's career. That doesn't feel like accountability, it feels strategic. The question no one asks is why someone who ignored Kelly's behavior for years suddenly stepped in at the exact moment his public destruction became useful, unless there was something to gain. The deeper you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. Aaliyah's marriage to Kelly at 15 wasn't just a scandal, it was the moment the industry chose silence over morality. Powerful people knew, no one spoke. And when the documentary that buried Kelly was released, alleged involvement from powerful figures wasn't just about justice, it was about control. The same people who benefited from the system that protected Kelly are the ones who never faced consequences themselves. That's not coincidence. That's structure. Now that structure is cracking, because Kelly's filings don't just talk about a prison hit. They reference something he's been hinting at for months. Recordings, not the ones used in court, but recordings allegedly made at private gatherings where the rules didn't apply and the attendees believed they were untouchable. What's being said quietly is that the people who should be nervous aren't behind bars. They're the ones who spent decades making sure no one ever connected these dots. Kelly's filings aren't just a plea for protection, they're a warning. Because if he's telling the truth, then the architects of hip-hop's empire didn't just ignore abuse, they enabled it, shielded it, and benefited from it. And now that the last person willing to speak is doing so from a prison cell, the question isn't whether the truth exists. It's how far people will go to keep it buried. The story doesn't end with Kelly. It ends with the men who ensured stories like his never surfaced. Combs' conviction was the first domino. Jay-Z's name appearing in federal chatter is the second, and the third, no one is talking about yet. The tapes, the witnesses, the people who stayed silent for decades because they understood the cost of speaking up. The industry didn't just protect its stars, it protected its secrets, and those secrets are what's truly at risk now. If Kelly is telling the truth, then power wasn't just misused, it was weaponized. Used to control artists, silence threats, and ensure no one ever got close enough to expose the full picture. And now, with Kelly allegedly fighting for his life in custody, the only remaining question is how far those implicated are willing to go. The filings reference a gang affiliation, a medical incident, and a sudden transfer to solitary confinement. They also reference names not yet public, but instantly recognizable to insiders. The Bureau of Prisons can dismiss this as conspiracy, but the timeline still doesn't make sense. You don't involve prison gangs to handle a nuisance. You do it when someone is seen as a threat. And the only threat Kelly represents now is information. This isn't just about one man. It's about a system that protected predators for decades, rewarded silence, and only turned when public outrage became impossible to contain. But outrage was never the real danger. The real danger was leverage, the tapes, the witnesses, the people who knew too much. And if Kelly is telling the truth, then the same system that once shielded powerful figures is finally turning on itself. So this is where we leave it for now. Because this story isn't over, it's just entering its most dangerous chapter. If Kelly is telling the truth, then the men who controlled the narrative for decades are about to lose that control. And if he isn't, then the silence from those with power still demands answers. So ask yourself this: who's really in control here? Who's willing to do whatever it takes to keep the secrets buried? And what happens when the last person who knows the truth is the one they're trying to silence? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just another story. It's a reckoning.